I also wanted to do two videos this year of movies that I felt were either underrated or overrated. I did that last year where I did top tens. This year I'm only going to do top five of each because I felt like with this being such a short year, or where great movies and movies that were called great, movies that were called not so good, where everything felt like it was more in the middle than anything else, I didn't have a lot to pick from. So I just did a top five underrated and overrated. All right, so here's my top five underrated films of 2018. And number five, I picked Ant-Man and the Wasp. In a year that gave us oversized superhero blockbusters like Black Panther, Infinity War, and Aquaman, as well as a second Deadpool and what's easily the best animated superhero movie I've ever seen, I can't help but feel compelled to call Ant-Man and the Wasp underrated. This funnier and more limber sequel to the 2015 origin story got buried underneath all these movies this past year. Hell, even Venom got more attention than Ant-Man and the Wasp, but not for good reasons. Although it wasn't some major building block in the Marvel franchise, it's an undemanding enough action comedy that deserves way more credit than it got in 2018. Number four, I picked Overboard. Now hear me out on this one. This remake of the 1980s so-called classic wasn't that good of a movie, and it's definitely not something I'm going to watch on my own ever again. But when you consider what a lousy year for comedies 2018 was, Overboard was passable in my opinion. While the concept isn't any less sitcomish than the original, there were things about it that I felt made it way better than the incredibly dated Kurt Russell Goldie Hawn version. For starters, I did laugh in this movie, if only a few times. Also, for a movie to come out in this day and age depicting a single mother taking care of her kids and an interracial romance, Overboard isn't obnoxiously showy, preachy, or self-congratulatory about it. It honestly has more nuance than some critically acclaimed films that did the same thing. It's not a brilliant movie, but it isn't offensive or pushy with some kind of agenda. And for a mom-com, you could do way worse. Like way, way worse. Number three, I picked After Everything. While Overboard doesn't redefine the romantic comedy, After Everything is a movie that surprisingly does. Also referred to by the title Shotgun, this movie stars Jeremy Allen White and Micah Monroe as a couple who get brought together by, of all things, cancer. It plays out kind of like a cross between 50-50 and Blue Valentine by giving a simultaneously funny, heavy, and affecting story about two young people getting through an illness together until he gets better and then their relationship slowly falls apart. This movie tries something different and it does work, and for that it earns a spot on this list. Number two is Alpha. Alpha was a massively overlooked movie of 2018. It was released the same weekend as the movie that has this exact same spot on my overrated list, and another movie I forgot even existed and didn't even bother to see when it got a home release. Yet, Alpha sadly underperformed at the box office. This story of a boy meets wolf is pretty exciting for the most part. Cody Smith-McPhee has some really good chemistry with the dog and gives an above-average performance. While it does lose steam about halfway through and sometimes feels like just a family-friendly version of The Revenant, it's still better than almost half of the Best Picture nominees this year. The wasteland backgrounds are cool-looking, and when compared to most dog movies, it's one of the best to get made in a really long time. And the number one pick on my list for most underrated film of the year was Blind Spotting, a movie with one of the most accurate titles of the year. Blind Spotting caught me entirely off guard. Daveed Diggs plays a black man from Oakland who has only 3 days left of parole. During that time, he witnesses a police officer shoot a running unarmed black man in the back. While it appears to be setting up the same kind of message on police violence and racial profiling like the ones found in Monsters and Men and The Hate You Give, Blind Spotting takes a different route that subverts every expectation you could have for it. Instead, what comes out of this movie is a lesson in how we perceive ourselves and others. Diggs portrays one of the most compelling characters I saw on screen this year, largely for who he represents, those individuals being the countless young African Americans who go through life feeling as though they have a target painted on their backs while being marginalized and stereotyped by people who only see them for their color and past criminal offenses. Also in the movie is Raphael Castle, who gives one of the best supporting performances of 2018. Despite being a white man, he has a similar dilemma as his childhood best friend. Because of the color of his skin, he's made to feel like an outsider in his own neighborhood, and at one point gets accused of appropriating black culture. Blindspotting is an intelligent, funny, touching, and important parable on how sad existence can be if we only see each other for shallow, predetermined racial notions. It's a buddy comedy that's daring and willing to take chances, and it doesn't push the same redundant reminder to come together despite our differences. Rather, it encourages us to embrace each other for how much we already have in common. Thank you so much for watching. Also, be sure to check out my video of most overrated films of 2018. As usual, I'm Logan D. McCoy, and this is Real McCoy Reviews.